My name is Heather Baxter, and I play Assistant Principal Oboe and English Horn with your Omaha Symphony. I've been asked many times why oboists make their own reeds. And to answer that question, you have to consider that every person is just a little bit different, both physically in their setup of their mouth and with their air and various other factors. So once you're playing at a high level, you want a reed that suits you perfectly. So the best way to get that is to make it yourself. We also, when we're making oboe reeds, use a natural substance. It's called Arundodonax, and it's similar to bamboo. And this is the same material oboists have been using for centuries. But because it's a natural material, every piece is going to be a little bit different as well. So when you're scraping a reed and shaping it into the shape that you need it, it's not going to be exactly the same every time, like a machine would scrape exactly the same. So you're not going to get the same results with that. So you want to be able to adjust them on your own. So that's the why. Now I'm going to take you through step by step how to make an oboe reed. So please enjoy. So to begin making a reed, I start with this tube cane. Some people use a splitter to get the exact piece they want. I just use a razor blade. So the first thing we do is line it up, make sure you have a nice straight piece, and then check the angle that you have around the edge there because you want it to be perfectly symmetrical. So once you have your piece, you just slice down. And separate it out. The next step involves taking your guillotine and cutting it to size so that you can then get it into the gouging machine. This is a gouging machine. It's kind of a primitive looking device, but is actually very complex. It actually gouges out the center of the reed and gives you the curve that you need to make a reed. I'm just going to find that straight edge one more time. Run it through here. So now that is the right size for my gouging machine. After cutting your cane to the right size, you need to run it through a pre-gouger, which is this little thing, and this is the pusher. And that just gets the first layers of cane off before you put it through your gouger. So now that's pre-gouged. Ideally, you want to gouge only soaked cane because it makes your gouging machine blade last a lot longer. So the piece of cane goes in like that. And then you just slide this along. And it takes off these curls of cane. So now that's bottomed out. So I'm going to flip the cane around and make sure it's even on the other side. So now that piece of cane has been gouged and is ready to be shaped and then tied onto a staple. So your staple looks like this. It's the part that actually goes into the oboe to hold the reed in. Everything needs to be measured very precisely. So I know that this staple is 47 millimeters long. And once I get my piece of cane shaped, I'm going to put it on the reed and measure to 73 with the particular shape that I use. This little wood piece is called an easel, and it just makes it a lot easier to find the center of the piece of cane so that when I bend it in half, I get exactly the center. So I'm just going to grab another razor blade. And I score down the middle of the piece of cane. Once that's scored, I can bend it in half pretty easily. And that's how we create our double reed, our 2 reeds. This is called a shaper tip and handle. And this is what I'm going to use to shape this piece of cane into the shape of an oboe reed. Sometimes you have to just take a little bit off the sides. Get it lined up perfectly so that it's symmetrical on each side. And just take a razor blade and come down the side. So I've got these little pieces of cane that came off, and now it's almost shaped on one side. Okay, so now I have a shaped piece of oboe cane. There's always just a little extra cane called the ears that need to be taken off. And give it a little soak one more time. So while that's soaking for a minute, I'm going to get, this is called my mandrel. This is what I use to hold the staple while I'm tying. It just gives you something to grab onto. So while that's soaking, I'm just going to get this ready and get my thread tied onto a secure object. Okay, so now that that thread is tied on, I have the spool right here. I'm going to grab my reed, or my cane. So that gets folded in half and placed on the staple. Like that. Like I said, I'm going to measure to 73 millimeters. That's just a little short. Okay. Then I'm going to start tying away from me. The most important part of this is that we don't end up going above the length of the staple with the thread, because that cuts off the vibration of the reed. So when I get close to the bottom like that, I'm going to actually tie multiple knots to make sure it doesn't come untied. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to cut it loose. Check and make sure it's sealed. And yep, we've got a seal. Okay, so now we have an oboe reed blank. So it's still not open at the top, you can't get any air through it. So that's going to come in the scraping, which is next. I'm just going to kind of rough scrape this quickly for you. To completely finish a reed, I usually stretch it out over a few days. And then this reed, when it's finished, will last anywhere from a couple hours to a couple weeks before it's just not able to play very well anymore. So I'll show you a little bit of the scraping. As you can see, it starts completely smooth. And I'm going to get it to the point that it looks like an oboe reed. Just like with the gouging and the shaping, you want to make sure everything is completely symmetrical from side to side and back to front. So I've got a little bit of a tip carved into it now. You can kind of see the light coming through there. And I'm going to cut the top open. Again, I use a razor blade and this little cutting block. And so now we have two separate reeds. You can see the hole just a little bit. Don't have any sound yet, it's still a little too thick. So I thinned down the tip, and now I'm putting in what I call windows. There's different terms for it that different oboists use, but so a little easier to play now. So this reed isn't finished yet. I would make it a lot thinner and easier to play, but that's a good start. So yeah, that's the basics of making an oboe reed, and thanks for watching.